Thank you so much for joining us online today. We are always encouraged to know how God is using this ministry to impact lives all around the world. If your life has been impacted or you have a story to share of what God is doing in your life, please let us know by visiting tworiversassembly.com. Also, if you would like to help support this ministry financially, you can do so today by giving online and helping us bring messages just like this one to you and hundreds of others all around the world each and every week. Finally, we want you to take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel, then share this content with others who might need it. Again, thank you for watching today. We hope you enjoy this message.
So they're the worst off. The first problem is, first step is recognize the problem. The second step is to become invested. Nehemiah wrote, "When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven." Before anything else happened, Nehemiah got down and he began praying and he began fasting about this. And when I first decided to go where I'm going, I actually contacted 3 different people. Will was one of them. I contacted 3 people and said, "I'm going to be fasting for a week. Please hold me accountable to that because I'm not very good at it." And I began fasting and praying and saying, "God, is this really you? Is this really what you want me to be doing?" Now, you might be thinking, whoa, back the truck up. I am not going to be fasting for no week. Anyone thinking that? Go ahead, raise your hand. Let's be honest. Anyone thinking that? I can't see if you're raising your hands or not, so I'm assuming no one did. Amen. But let's say you decided that you were going to fast. And the question is, how bad do you want these walls? How bad do you want to rebuild the godliness and the integrity in your family and for your children? How bad do you want it? So let's say you decide you're going to fast for a week. Okay, you get going, and partway through day 1, you're going out to lunch with the guys, and everybody goes out, and you forget that you're supposed to be fasting. You eat lunch. Don't quit. You're batting 500. You still got 19 meals to go. It's okay. Just keep going from there. So you keep going, and you fast that night. The next morning, you wake up. You start getting going with your morning. By the time you remember that you were supposed to be fasting, you're finishing up that bowl of Cheerios. Slurp down that milk and then start over. You still got 17 more meals to go. Even if you mess up on your fast, keep going. Even if you, like at the end of the week, let's say 21 meals, 7 days, at the end of that time, you fasted 12 and you messed up 9 times. You did not mess up 9 times. What you did was you took 12 really big stones, laid them down as a foundation and said, "God, I am serious about this. And I'm so serious about rebuilding these walls that I'm going to keep going even after I mess up. And I'm going to keep pushing forward even after I mess up." That's 12 victories that you had in that week. And maybe next time you'll do better. But that's okay. You keep going and you keep pushing it. Become invested in rebuilding the walls. You have to decide, I want to do this no matter what. And I want to make this happen no matter what. That's the second step. The third step is to take ownership. We read back in Nehemiah, he says, "Then I said, Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night. For your servants, the people of Israel, I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you." Now let me tell you, Nehemiah was writing this some 80 years after those walls were first knocked down. Some 80, 85 years after the walls were knocked down, Nehemiah is writing this. Okay, so it is not his sin that caused those walls to fall. That is multiple generations in the past, the sin of multiple generations in the past that caused those walls to fall. It wasn't even his father's sin that caused those walls to fall. But he was still living among a people with broken walls. And he was still living among a people of fallen walls. And it was his sin that he was living in luxury in the palace while those walls remained down. And once he recognized the need, he took ownership of it and said, "God, I'm sinned. I'm sinned. My father sinned. Our family has sinned. Our people have sinned. Forgive us." Now, I don't know what your addiction is. I don't know what the bad that you're trying to break is. Some people it might be anger. Some people it might be addiction. Some people it might be laziness. Whatever it is, It's not your fault that your dad taught you to be that way or your mom taught you to be that way. It's not your fault that you have 4 generations of alcoholics ahead of you or behind you, however you want to read that. It's not your fault that that's the place. But it is your fault if you're passing that on to the next generation. And you can't blame anyone else for your anger issues. It might have been harder for you because that's the way you were raised and that's the environment you saw it in, but it's still your anger issues. And you need to take ownership of that. And you need to say, this is mine, and I'm going to stop it right here, right now, no more. I'm taking ownership of this. That's his 3rd step. The 4th step is to ask for help. This is probably the hardest step for me to do. I like to be independent. I like to be able to do things all by myself. But Nehemiah, at the end of that prayer, it says, Lord, give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. And then the very next day, Nehemiah is before the king, and the king looks at him and sees he's sad and says, Nehemiah, what's going on? Nehemiah says, how can I not be sad? My walls are broken down. And the king says, well, what do you want? Nehemiah tells the king, give me a chance to go back to Jerusalem and help rebuild these walls. King could have said, hey, you want to get out of my presence? Okay, you're dead. Good God. That's the authority and the power and the megalomaniac type of kings they had back then. He could have done that. But instead, he turns to Nehemiah and says, how long are you going to be gone, and when will you get back? So Nehemiah gives him a time, but then after Nehemiah gives him a time, Nehemiah asks the king, hey, could you send a letter to this guy asking for this, and send a letter to that guy asking for that, and then send a letter to this guy over here asking for this. Because Nehemiah was a cupbearer to the king, he knew who all the movers and the shakers were. He knew who all the powerful people were, and he not only asked the king for help, but he asked the king to ask his buddies for help in rebuilding the walls. Nehemiah did that, and then it says, and because of the gracious hand of my God was upon me, the king granted my request. The king gave him that. We need to be willing to swallow our pride and ask for help. Now, there are 3 different men. I'm not sure if they're all in the room today. I believe they're all in the room. 3 men in this building that are key to being able to help you out. First of those is Pastor Carey. He is our spiritual formations pastor, and he is an amazing gifted counselor. Go speak. Yeah, go ahead. Clap. Yeah. Go speak to him. If you need help, he is someone that is here for that purpose, for that reason. We also have Gary Ingraham here, who is leading Love and Truth Network, which leads a network that helps overcome addictions, sexual addictions. He is a man, if you're Breaking Bad or in those areas, he is a key resource that we have here in this church that can help you. The 3rd man is Pastor Wayne. He, for over 20 years, 20, how long? 23? 23 years, he was a chaplain in prison. So he's dealt with a lot of different issues with regards to Breaking Bad and a lot of different issues that needed help. If you need help, these 3 men, along with many other godly men and women, are here in this church to help you. But they can't help you if you don't ask. And they're not going to help you if you don't come to them and say, hey, listen, this is what I've been going on. This is what I need. Can you help me? It takes a lot of swallowing of pride to do that. It's hard for me to do that. I actually created a crowdfunding site to help raise money to go to Turkey. That is the hardest thing in the world for me to do. I waited too long. I didn't promote it enough. And I still don't like doing it. I don't resist an urge every day to take it down because I don't like doing that. I don't like asking for help. But it's biblical and it's godly for us to do that and for me to do that. And it's biblical and godly for you to seek out the help that God has already provided and placed in your path, if only you'd ask him. So that's step 4, ask for help. Step 5 is to study the problem. Nehemiah says, I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. I went up to the valley by night and examined the wall. For me, studying the problem to get to where I had to go, a lot of the immigration laws had changed, and a lot of those things had changed, and it took a lot of work for me to figure out what hoops do I have to jump through, and in what order do I have to jump through them. And for the first couple months that I was getting ready and preparing, I was kind of like just reaching out blindly in the dark because it was really confusing. It was really changed. But I had to study that and look at that. What are the issues that you're dealing with, and how can you break them? There's 2 things that you need to look at. One, what triggers Let's say your issue is anger. What triggers my anger? When do I get angry? Why am I getting angry? And the second thing, how can I cope with that? How are there ways to do that? I'll just share an example of this. I have a very indulgent personality. I will go 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time without watching any TV, and then I will sit down and watch an entire season of some TV program all at once, literally all at once. That's not good. That's not healthy. And I've had to learn what triggers that. Why am I doing that? And I found that usually when I start doing that, and it's the same problem with books, I'll start reading a book and I will literally read straight through the night. Usually this happens, though, later at night. And about 8, 9, 10 o'clock, when I'm getting ready, starting to wind down, get ready for bed, I'll watch an episode. And when I finish that, I'll watch another episode. When I finish that one, I'll watch another episode. And then the next one. And the next one. And then my alarm is going off, and it's time to get ready for school the next day. Not school, but work. I hope I'm not going to school. Work the next day. I've been doing this since high school and beyond. This is an added issue that I've had. I've learned the best way for me to beat that is when my alarm goes off in the morning, wake up, get up, and get about my day. Because if I'm getting up when I'm supposed to be getting up in the morning, when I'm supposed to be going to bed, I'll be tired enough to go to bed. But when I sleep in the morning, now I have temptation issues at night. So that's something I had to study and look at and think about. And those are the certain, this is one, that's me, and it might not work for you, but there's certain ways that you can look at yourself and begin to study, what is this issue and how do I beat it? And what does it take to beat this issue? So study the problem. The sixth thing is to create or join a community of wall builders. I'm going to say 3 words: T groups, T groups, T groups. They are here for a reason. These are communities of wall builders. This is opportunities for you to jump into life with people that are going through issues of their own that need to have walls built. Nehemiah says, "Then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let's rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace." They replied, "Let's start rebuilding." And they all began the good work. So Nehemiah gathered together a group of people, and all of them together began rebuilding the walls. Now, like I said earlier, you have to take ownership. You have to rebuild your walls. However, you are doing that as a part of community of wall builders. And we have T groups. And again, the Love and Truth Network has life groups for those that are going through similar issues. And you can join these groups, and together you are much stronger than you would ever be alone. And together you can build each one of your walls faster and more solid and more firmly than you would ever be able to do it on your own. Get involved, get in a group. The seventh thing, Nehemiah says, when Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Why do they rebuild the walls?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What are they building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads." So we rebuilt the walls till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their might. Step 7, let God deal with the critics. You just build that wall. There are going to be people that come into your life. There are going to be people that used to be part of your life that when they see you rebuilding that wall, they're going to get angry. There might be people, if you've been an addict, that used to be an addict with you. Well, they're still addicts, and now you're sober. They're still addicts, and now you're clean, and they're mad because that just makes them look worse. There might be people, a family of lazy people, all of a sudden you start showing initiative and get going and get moving, they're going to be mad. If everyone in your family has issues with anger, they're going to try to get your goat. Because once you start mellowing out and stop showing the anger that they're showing, they're going to want you to prove that you're still just like them. Tobiah and Sanballat hated these walls going up because as long as the walls were down, they had their thumb on the Jewish people. But once those walls were going up, they lost their control. And there might be people who might be trying to control your life. And as you begin to build these walls, and as you begin to do the work day by day, step by step, moment by moment to rebuild those walls, they're losing their grip on you. And they hate it. But let God deal with that. Let God deal with them. You just focus on those walls. That's the seventh. The eighth thing is to stay alert. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Apathy and neglect will always lead to failure. As you're rebuilding the walls, you need to be alert, and you need to stay focused and stay aware. These are the issues you've studied. You know what the triggers are, so you need to be alert to when those triggers might be popping up. And you've seen that, and you know what those issues are, so you need to be alert and focused and make sure that those times don't come up. Stay alert, but also protect each other. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at exposed places, posting them by their families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I said, don't be afraid of them. Remember, the Lord your God is great and awesome. He will fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Your families, your sons, your daughters, your spouses, and your homes. That's why you're rebuilding these walls. You are not just doing it for you. You are rebuilding that wall so that the people coming behind you can have protection, can have spiritual safety, can have security, so that they won't have to fight the battles you fought, so they don't have to struggle with the things you struggled. You're building these walls not just to protect your own life, but also to protect others. And keep that in mind, and it becomes so much easier. Because it might be one thing, if it's just for me, I'll give up. But if I got a little boy, or if I got a little girl, and I want them to grow up more godly than I was, then I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to keep pushing for this. And I'm going to keep doing it step by step, day by day, but also protect the other people that are rebuilding walls. As you begin to get into life groups, as you begin to get into these T groups, you might hear about some of the walls other people are building. If someone else is struggling with alcohol, even though you might not be, maybe if you're going to go out to lunch, go somewhere that doesn't serve. Not because it's a temptation for you, but because you're protecting them. And you're doing that for them. Protect each other. Also, rebuilding the walls is part work and it's part warfare. Nehemiah writes, from that day on, half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armors. Those who carried the materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. I was saying before that there are going to be people in your life that as you build these walls, they're going to get upset and they might start criticizing and sniping. Well, there's someone else that's going to get upset. Satan is going to be getting upset when you begin to show spiritual growth and progress and maturity. And when those walls begin to get higher, the enemy is going to begin attacking you. Now, Satan is not all-powerful, and he is not all-knowing like God. So he can't be everywhere attacking everyone all at once. The ones he's going to go after are the ones he's losing control of. And the ones the enemy is going to attack are the ones that are doing well and that are growing and maturing. Those are the ones he's going to attack, because focus your resources where you're losing it. If someone's been in sin their whole life, why do I have to mess with them? They're still in sin. But if someone is getting out of that and growing forward and becoming a spiritual leader in his home and in his family and his community, that's the one Satan's going to go after. Those are the ones he's going to attack. And so building walls isn't just about building. It's also about warfare. Two things with warfare. First of all, avoid the distractions. Talks about in Nehemiah how Sanballat came 4 different times. He wrote a letter to Nehemiah, and he went to Nehemiah, and he said, hey, Nehemiah, let's come talk about this. You're building that wall. Let's come over here to the plain of Uno, and let's talk about this for a minute. Nehemiah all 4 times said, no, I can't do that. I'm too busy building this. I've got a work to do, because he recognized that Sanballat wanted to get him away from the protection of the walls where he could attack him and harm him. So Nehemiah avoided the distractions of Sanballat. But then later on, Sanballat came back, and he used one of the priests, and he had an open letter. And in this letter, it wrote down that once the walls are built, Nehemiah is going to try to proclaim himself king, and he's going to try to rebel against his king. And this was a blatant, out-and-out lie. But this is a lie that Sanballat and Tobiah and those men that hated Nehemiah and what he was doing started spreading about him, trying to discredit him, trying to get him to mess up, trying to get him to stop, trying to get him to fall into sin. As you're rebuilding those walls and as you begin to grow and mature, there might be lies that are said about you. There might be distractions that come up. That's not just distractions and lies. That is warfare by the enemy. Sword in one's hand, the hammer in the other. You just keep building. You just keep building. You fight those wars on your knees. That was the 10th thing. The 11th thing, do not run and do not give up. Nehemiah, they said this and they kept saying this, and Nehemiah finally responded to them a final no. He said, I said to them, should a man like me run away, I will not go. Don't run, don't give up. I'm going to share a bit of an embarrassing moment that happened to me 2 days ago. I was kind of talking a little bit about this to Will. I got hit by a bus. No, I'm sorry. I was getting off a bus and I got hit by a car. Let me rephrase that. I didn't get... Ooh, not quite as exciting, I know. But I was getting off the bus and it's snowing hard. And I don't know how many of you guys, it's about 10 o'clock on Friday and it was snowing pretty hard and it's going. And I'm getting off the bus and walking across the street. And as I'm getting off the bus and walking across the street, this car passed by the bus, ran a stop sign, and ran right in front of me. I jumped back, but even as I jumped back, it hit my hand and knocked. Actually, I was holding this in my hand, and no, Jay, I was not reading it, I promise. You can't read it in the snow. But I was holding this in my hand, and the car hit me hard enough that it knocked this out of my hand. So it wasn't this big, huge impact. I didn't go flying anywhere, but it was enough to hurt me a little and get me really mad. This car drove by, hit me, kept going, and parked in the parking lot at Barnes & Noble's. Didn't even notice that they hit me. I'm mad. I picked that nook up off the ground, started walking over there. This poor lady, probably 5'2", just short brown hair, just sitting there in the car. I'm coming over to that car, and I just point my finger down there and just start chewing her out. She cracks the window down a little bit. At first, she didn't even realize she hit me. And that got me even more mad. And I just start going, you did this and you did that, and what was wrong with you? What are you thinking? You're a terrible driver. They should take your license. And I'm just going off at her. And her window's cracked down a little bit. She goes, you need to learn how to cross the street. Hello, I can't see you. There's a bus there. I'm flipping out, and I'm so mad I'm starting to shake. And she sees something in me. She rolls that window up, puts the key back in, and takes off. Whatever she was going to do at Barnes & Noble, that can wait. She's getting away from the crazy man. All right? I did it. I turned around, stormed into Barnes & Noble's, went into the bathroom, locked the door in the bathroom. I'm so mad, I'm shaking. And the first thing that comes into my mind, what were you thinking? Why am I doing that? I'm supposed to be a representative of Christ, and I'm ready to murder this poor lady. Horrible. I failed. I messed up. I like to say I have a real keen, very mellow temperament. But when I get mad, it gets scary. Really scary. And that's an issue that I need to work on. And that's an issue I need to be praying about. And that's an issue I need to be building walls so that behind me won't have to deal with it. But I failed. And every single one of us, as we're rebuilding the walls, no matter what those walls are, whether it's an addiction, whether it's alcohol, whether it's anger, whether it's lust, there might be moments we fail. When we fail, we have two choices. Forget it. Kick that wall down, walk away. Or pick those stones back up, put them back in place, and then pick another one and keep building. Do not run. Do not give up. You have a wall that needs to be built, and it's not just being built for you. It's being built for everyone you come in contact with, and especially for everyone who's going to come after you. That wall needs to be built, and you need to keep building and keep building and keep building until that wall reaches so high you see the Father, and he says to you, well done, my good and faithful servant. Step 12 is to finish the wall. This moment, if I would just have every head bowed and every eye closed. I know each one of us that's here, we have walls. We have walls that are in ruins. Each one of us, there are different areas, there are different struggles, there are different fights that each one of us go through, but we all have areas that we need to say, God, I want to build this wall. But the first step to that is acknowledging that ultimately it's God who builds the wall, and it's us that he uses. There might be people in this room today, there might be people here today who've never tried out this Jesus thing, who've never even stepped foot into the arena to say, God, I want to start doing this, or God, I want to live for you. Well, today is an opportunity for you to do that. And it's real easy. There's two things that you need to do, and we've already talked about what those two things are. One was the third step, take ownership. The reason that you are not one of God's children is because of the sin that you've committed. And the reason your relationship is not already right with God is because of the sin you've committed. And if you want to be called one of God's children, if you want to become a Christian, if you want to do this thing, if you want to start rebuilding a wall, first thing you got to do is say, God, I've sinned. I've failed. And the second thing is to ask for help. Step 4. Jesus came. He lived a sinless, perfect life on this earth, but he still was crucified, and we saw pictures of it earlier. He was still nailed to that cross. He was nailed there not because of his sin, but because of yours, because of mine. He was nailed there for that. And all it takes to begin these walls, all it takes to begin a walk with God, all it takes to begin a life with Christ is to say, God, I've sinned, and I want to live for you. I give it to you. If there is anyone in this room that wants to do that today, just go ahead and raise your hand. If there's anyone here who for the first time or who wants to renew your commitment to walk with God, go ahead and just raise up those hands. I see a couple of those up near top. I see those. You can go ahead and put those hands down. At this moment, I'm just going to just pray a very simple prayer, and I'll just ask everybody, including those that raise your hands, but everybody to just pray this with me. Dear Jesus, I'm a sinner. I've messed up. And now there's walls broken all around me. Forgive me of those sins. Come live in me and with me. Help me to rebuild these walls, because I want to live for you. In your name we pray. Amen.